When Joe murdered James, he shattered my father's heart in a million pieces, and he never truly recovered. His health suffered, and he never found joy in anything after James Jr.'s murder. Unfortunately, he passed away at age 64. The fortunate part is that he will never have to know about this parole review. I know he couldn't have handled the thought that Joe could possibly be released into society. Keith and I are the only living members from our immediate family and the products of our two parents. We will be the voices for our family members who no longer live.
You wouldn't be alone if you felt offended by seeing the faces and the actions of his attorney and himself, as a matter of fact, while the victim is crying, while the victim is sharing how his actions, how when he murdered two people back in 1995 for absolutely no reason at all. When she is crying her eyes out, they are passing notes, scribbling lines to each other like school children in elementary school. In the many years of covering parole hearings where we've covered thousands, we have never seen this. And this was just something else. Now that's just the tip of the iceberg. He has many victims. Like I said, in 1995, he killed two people who were his friends, shot them in the back of the head when they were giving him a ride for no reason. And then what he does is he shows up to his parole hearing, he conflicts the facts of the case and drags the victim through the mud. You can't make it up. The only reason that he has a chance at a hearing is because of a bill that was passed last year in Connecticut, 23-169, which states if you are under the age of 21, well, you automatically have a chance at parole. And you heard me right, not 18, but 21. Even though a judge sentenced him not to just one life sentence or two life sentences, but 999 years, 99 months, and 99 days. Well, now 30 years into that 999-year sentence, he's up for parole. That comes out to just 15 years per body. But let's see what happens with that.
Mr. Fernandez, can you please state your name and inmate number for the record?
Joseph Fernandez, 238-390.
Thank you. This is a public hearing in accordance with Chapter 14, Freedom of Information Act, Connecticut General Statute 1-200, which applies to this procedure. Mr. Fernandez, if you have any questions concerning the above, please bring your questions to the attention of the panel at this time. Again, this is a public hearing. Mr. Fernandez, do you have any questions?
No, ma'am.
And are you willing to proceed with the hearing at this time?
Yes.
Thank you. So as previously indicated, this is a Public Act 23-169 hearing being conducted in consideration of the parole application for Joseph Fernandez, inmate number 238-390. Mr. Fernandez serving a sentence of life with no probation to follow for murder. There is victim input in this case. There is also an offender accountability plan in place that has been reviewed and shows that he has completed the following programs, which includes Tier 2, Thresholds, Voices, People Empowering People, and Smart Recovery. He also reportedly completed Alternatives to Violence. He's currently participating in the Second Chance Pell Grant College program and maintains a job assignment. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system, the offender's overall score on the RT falls within the low range risk for recidivism. Mr. Fernandez, this is now your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole, and you may begin.
Thank you. Good morning, board members. Thank you for giving me the chance to stand before you today. My priority is to the families of Erica McGilvery and James McMillan. I, Joseph Fernandez, I sincerely apologize for taking the lives of your loved ones. Nobody has a right to give a life or take a life but God. I conducted myself in a reckless manner, thinking only about myself. I am truly sorry for what I have done. I've learned that when a life is taken in a reckless manner, the impact that it takes on all connected or related to is a devastating and causing long-term suffering. It's like a domino effect and even cause my family to suffer as well. I wish I could rewind the clock back and make better decisions, but I cannot. What I can do is ask for forgiveness, and as God has already forgiven me. What I will do, if you, the board member that allowed me to stand before you today and share my condolences and remorse, decide to reduce my sentence, allowing me another chance at life, I will spend the rest of my time reaching out to at-risk youth who are getting into trouble by sharing my experience and reckless actions of my teenage years, hoping to prevent them from making the same mistakes I made. At the time of the incident, I was 18 years old. I had spent the majority of my life incarcerated. Since incarcerated, I have become a man of reason, understanding, patience, qualities I did not possess at 18 years old. I have become educated on how to live life. I am a better me, for the only person I have to be is the person I was last week. With that being said, I am asking the board to acknowledge the person I am today and to give me an opportunity to utilize my newly learned coping skills to be successful in life. Growing up, I lived with my mother in public housing, a project known as Marina Village. There were a lot of drugs and gun violence. My mother and father divorced when I was around 3 or 4 years old. I spent weekends with my father, grandparents, my aunts, and my cousin. My mother worked and provided for me the best she could. Living in Marina Village did not come without its fair share of scary moments. When I was in the 5th grade, I remember my house being shot up by drug dealers who lost a lot of money in drugs in a raid. They blamed my mother for the raid and labeled her as a snitch. They would hide drugs in my backyard along with money and guns. They did this so when the cops came around, they wouldn't find anything on them. My mother constantly told the drug dealers to stop hiding stuff in her yard. Because of this, my mom and I lived in fear and paranoia. During the 8th grade school year, I went to live with my father full time. I would visit my mother on the weekends. My friends in Marina Village became drug dealers when I started high school. I'd see them with cars, guns, and cash. I began to like their lifestyle until they got arrested and went to jail. They lived a gangster lifestyle, which had an influence on my attitude in school. Nevertheless, I attended high school all the way up until the day I was arrested. I had good grades and was on the basketball team and football team. I also had a job stocking the frozen food section at Edwards Supermarket. On the weekends, I would hang out with the new set of peers I met in high school who smoked weed laced with PCP and they drank a lot of beer. I started drinking beer with them, and I also tried weed laced with PCP 2 or 3 times my junior year when I was 17. On the day of this incident, I was not only drinking beer, but I also smoked weed laced with PCP. I was feeling high and paranoid. I was told by multiple people that James was going to shoot me, and if he couldn't shoot me, he was going to shoot up my house. A student from James' school told me to watch my back because James had a gun. He was talking about shooting me or shooting my house. This stemmed from an incident that happened. It occurred in the fall of 1994, about 6 months before the crimes. I went to Club 302 with friends. James was also there. One of my friends from elementary school was being jumped by a group of individuals. I intervened to help him escape the group. We were all kicked out of the club. Once inside, the same group of individuals and others concerned cornered me and started to attack me. One of my friends tried to help, but couldn't. At one point, I saw James and others get into his car and leave. At school, in the following weeks, I hear that James is telling people that he helped me fight off the crowd. I told him this was not true. In reality, James left when police were on their way. Students then made fun of James, calling him a runner. His street credibility was ruined, which prohibited him from joining the gang. This upset James, and he began to tell others he was going to shoot me. This led me to make one of the most unthinkable decisions to not only buy a gun, but to carry the gun for protection. I was afraid and didn't know who to confide in. After school on Friday, I was drinking PCP. I was smoking weed laced with PCP. I was drinking beer. We were supposed to go to the movies, me and some friends, but I felt sick. Before the events of the horrific crime, I left a friend's sister's house. I walked down the street. James was at work. He was inside the pizza place getting pizzas to deliver. Jato was getting out of the car to walk home. I squeezed into the back seat of the car, hoping to get a ride from James. James came out of the pizza place with the orders and sat them next to me on the seat. I asked James for a ride home, and he said, "I'll bring you to the school. That's as far as I'm going with this order." So he drove around the corner and stopped at a light. I asked him if we were cool because I was told he had a gun and to watch my back. James said, "We were cool. Don't listen to what other people are telling me." I told him that kids from school were telling me that he said he was going to shoot me, and if he couldn't shoot me, he was going to shoot up my house. I was worried and nervous. I asked him again, did he say that, as he turned down the street to pick up somebody. James pulled the car over and turned around and faced me and said, "Stop asking me the same thing over and over again." He raised his voice saying, "Yes, I said that, and the next time I see you, you know what time it is." I was alarmed. Erica got into the car and James drove around the corner to pick up Jato. James drove to the delivery address. I kept thinking about what he said at that point. I felt it was either him or me. The drugs played a major role in my paranoia. I panicked and was at this point that I shot James. I attempted to climb out of the back seat, stepping on the armrest in the console. I fell backwards into the seat I was sitting. I was in a tight space. I pulled myself forcefully between the driver's seat when the gun went off again. I still had a gun in my right hand. And while trying to get from the back seat to the front of the car, after the gun went off, I jumped out of the driver's side window, hitting and landing on the side of my head. I was dizzy as I ran from the car. I went home to my grandparents that night. The next morning, as I was cleaning around the house, my grandmother was reading the newspaper aloud, and she said one person was found unresponsive and another victim was taken to the hospital where they later passed away. My grandmother shook her head and sounded sad as she sent prayers to the victim's family. I was in shock because I didn't know Erica was shot too. And again, I want to apologize for the loss of Erica. I never meant to shoot her, but I take responsibility for both deaths. As I stated previously, I was in high school and only 18 years old when the crimes occurred. This was the first time I've ever been in prison. I've never been in trouble like this before. It has been almost 3 decades since I've been incarcerated for my unthinkable actions I take full accountability for. Back then, I was an immature follower. I couldn't find my place in the community. I was trying to fit in when I was born to stand out. If I only knew then what I knew now, I would have made better decisions. During my incarceration, I have worked on my self-growth, taking accountability, and helping others. While I did receive 7 disciplinary tickets, almost 30 years, I've stayed out of trouble for the past 10 years. Throughout my past 30 years, I've maintained employment. I also volunteered as a hospice worker, sitting and taking care of terminally ill patients. I did this as an act of atonement. I have a sense of redemption. I made a horrible choice, but I have a chance to come back from it. I also asserted myself to any available programs to me. Become a better man, a child of God, before there was an OAP. Thus far, I've taken and received certificates for alternatives to violence, smart recovery, thresholds, people empowering people, AA, Tier 2. I received my GED, and I'm currently in the Second Chance Pell program. I'm also a certified blood spill cleanup. I'm on a COVID-19 cleanup team. I'm also a Literacy Volunteer of America tutor. A young man in my situation would have given up. They would be bitter, carrying a lot of anger towards everyone and not taking accountability. Even though I was given life without parole, I still put forth hard work and effort to show that I could be rehabilitated. I've learned to find the positive in the negative situation. I try to see the good in every situation and make the best of it. For my transition back into society, I plan to participate in the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, where I will receive a CDL training and become a truck driver. I will also take part in the Career Connect CT program to become a certified forklift operator. I plan to work in the factory as a forklift operator until I get a job as a truck driver. I'm also a certified commercial cleaner. I can be hired as a janitor in a hospital. I could work in a supermarket or a hotel. I will spend my free time mentoring troubled youth at a community outreach center, such as Catalyst CT in Bridgeport or CT VIP in New Haven. As a way of giving back to the community, I have become a person who is always looking to accomplish something. I'm not afraid of hard work. I've learned how to respond to difficult situations. I'm a dependable employee. I feel pleased to have the chance to learn, have the chance to apply what I have learned. I've learned a lot over the years, and I've taken inventory of my teenage self as well as my mature self. I've learned from my GED teacher, Mrs. T, take time to change my distorted views, which will give me a chance to better understand who I really am as a person. I'm not the same immature 18-year-old I was. After mentoring young men 20 to 25 years of age, I truly have a different outlook on life. I've helped younger inmates prepare themselves for life back into society, with families, and to be productive citizens in society. I also help them study for their GED test, and I encourage them to take college courses and to participate in programs that will teach them how to make better decisions and to use resources available to them. The prison environment has been both challenging and a place of growth. It has been a humbling experience. I have received encouragement from my peers, staff, instructors, and other inmates who have been pardoned or paroled. I have also prepared myself for a life back in society with my family and to be a successful, productive citizen. I hope to have a second chance to return to society to show and prove that I can be of value to the community. I spent the last 30 years incarcerated, and not a day goes by that I don't think of Erica and James and pray for forgiveness from their families. I'm ashamed of my actions as an 18-year-old, but I am proud of the man I have become. While I can't take back my actions, I can use the skills I've learned and the opportunities I have been given to change the lives of others and prevent another tragedy like this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fernandez, for your statement. We have reviewed your entire file. This panel is very well versed. We have the police report, the court transcripts, all of the documents from throughout your incarceration, certificates, evaluations. We received letters of support from friends and family members. In addition, we have a packet of information from your attorney Guerrero, as well as the report from social worker Macho. So we're very well versed. We do have some additional questions. When we're done with our questions, we'll ask the Office of Victim Services to provide any victim input that they have, after which your attorney and the state's attorney will be allowed the opportunity to give a statement. At the end, we'll deliberate amongst ourselves and we'll give you our decision here today. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we'll begin our questioning with my colleague, Mr. Pohl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Mr. Fernandez.
Good morning.
That was a very good statement. You talked about the offense and how you're not the same person that you were at 18. You talked about your reckless actions. and taking 2 lives and the impact that that's had on so many people. You know, and your mandatory sentence was life in prison. And when I look at a case like this, and early on, you know, that's what it was. It was life in prison. Here I am. But you've made choices. You know, your young, reckless behavior turned positive relatively early. What I've seen is that your disciplinary report history includes no violent acts. And that's something that's, for me, that's something that's important to see, right? Because what you committed out there was ultimate violence, you know, twice. How early on did you take the Alternatives to Violence program?
I want to say about in the late 90s, maybe around 98.
Yeah.
And so you had the opportunity to not only take the basic, but the advanced, and became a facilitator. How involved were you in that program?
I worked side by side with facilitators that would come in from society, and I would assist them with some of the programming we had planned for the guys that signed up for the program to participate.
And how many guys do you think went through that program? Let me revise that. How many guys do you think went through that program while you were helping facilitating?
Possibly almost 40.
Another thing that's really important and really specific to the offense for me, you got involved in hospice care.
Yes.
And you were involved in that in hospice care for how long?
Possibly since 2010.
So still, or
no, I was
just
transferred.
a
It was an adjusted period. I was transferred from McDougal, where I was doing hospice, and I also was a janitor. I came here to Gardner about 2014 and been here ever since.
So it's like what, 4 to 6 years?
6 years.
Is that right?
No, I've been here 10 years, but I've been in hospice for 4 years.
You were in hospice for 4 years.
Yes.
Okay. You know, inmates deserve to die with dignity.
Yes.
And when you're in dealing with people who are in hospice care, certainly it's end of life for people, right?
Yes. Yes.
How do you think that working, well, one, how many people do you think you worked with? If you're going to have to estimate, how many people in hospice care do you think you worked with?
So I have about 5 patients.
how did that change your seeing life and death?
I've really never seen anything like that experience, but it was also, it was a humbling experience. And one of the patients that I was looking after, he was in my unit. So it was really, he was a good friend to me also before the fact. And I was shocked that he was going on hospice because he didn't tell anybody. So I basically stayed here. I cooked for him. Whenever he needed meds, I alerted the nurse to him. But we played cards days that he could. Some days he didn't feel too good, so he wouldn't get out of bed. But I try to make everything, it's palliative care. I just try to make everything easy and calm for him.
That's something that changes people, right?
Yes.
So
It takes
that's, go ahead.
It takes a certain type of individual to do that. I've seen some guys that they take the hospice program, but then they have second thoughts when they see what it involves and the fact that they're helping somebody that could pass away. Like some of them couldn't handle it, but I felt for me, it was changing my person, showing who I am, and I just wanted to give back to other people that just need help.
And that's really, it's important to me sitting here because the offense that we're dealing with was a reckless offense that took people's lives like that. And being able to experience and do what you did with hospice, you know, it's like it can't help but change, you know, your view on life itself. So I appreciate you doing that. There are several other programs that you've taken and you talked about those. It's really important that you're able to do that and gain from them what you did. You know, it's part of offender change. You know, and from what I heard and from what I've read with your interview from the parole officer and what's been supplied to us, you know, when you said that you're not the same person, you know, for me, that's pretty obvious. You're in the Second Chance Pell program?
Yes, sir.
Working on associates in business?
Yes.
How far along are you?
Right now I have 33 credits and I need 60 to receive my associate's degree. I have a 3.71 grade average.
Very good. That's very good. So one of the other things that I just want to touch on is that substance use played a part in this whole thing, right?
Yes.
As I looked, none of your, correct me if I'm wrong, none of your tickets had anything to do with substance use, right?
No, sir.
You've taken Tier 2, you've taken Smart Recovery, you've been involved with AA. Can you talk to me a little bit about where you are when it comes to recovery?
When it comes to recovery, I've been sober 30 years and I took that, I volunteered to take that class, and just to show that, you know, I don't plan on using any drugs. I took AA to show of good faith. I'm not even gonna take a drink. And basically the drugs, PCP and the weed and drinking beer, I threw my whole life away because of that. And I don't want anything to do with that anymore.
People out here get really crazy over heroin and fentanyl. And PCP is just, I don't know how many of these cases that I've sat through where PCP is what somebody was taking when they took somebody's life. I mean, that's really rough. So I know you say that you don't have any plans to use and such. And I'm sure that through Smart Recovery and Tier 2 that you've dealt with people, places, and things, right?
Yes.
What can you tell me about what you're going to do with people, places, and things when you get out here in the community if that happens?
First, I plan on looking for a job to take care of my financial. I will sign up for I will continue with my education through Housatonic to make sure I receive my degree. Once I have it, I'll go to New Haven, and I'll also continue on to get my bachelor's. And I will also look for an apartment, a place to live. And on my free time, I'll be mentoring troubled youth.
Okay, so that covers a goal, that covers education. And that covers a really important thing in the community, right?
Yes. I plan to be a pillar in the community also.
And you know, the thing is that people with your background can do things in the community that others can't when it comes to our kids. But what I'm really looking at though, and when I ask the question, it's like people, places, and things are what you had in your life that put you where you're sitting right now.
Yes.
And I hear your admirable goal about education and about helping to mentor youth. But what about the people, places, and things for Mr. Fernandez?
For me, if the board decides to give me a second chance and they have programs that they would want me to take, I'm more than willing to take them. AA, or if I had to go out for NA also. But I have the support of my family also. Get a chance to meet the family that I did meet. They're now all adults because I've been incarcerated for 30 years.
Okay, so family and what else? Do you have any connections in the community right now?
Right now, I have a connection with in New Haven community with CTVIP. It's a mentoring group.
Okay. What kind of group is that?
They mentor the kids in the community, as far as I know. As well as some of them also work. They're working in Yale, New Haven. And also I have CT emerge to help with my employment.
Okay. I'm going to tell you really what I'm looking for there. You know, when you stepped inside Connecticut DOC in 1995, you left a group of people that I'm sure that when you come out there, you don't want anything to do with. So the question really is about, if they're not in your life, who is? So it's just something to think about. I'm not even looking for an answer. The places that you were hanging around were places that led to why you're sitting in that seat right now. And what are the places? And I heard you talk about school, Housatonic, and you know, New Haven, coming up for your bachelor's in New Haven, both admirable things. But one of the biggest things in a transition back into the community is to make sure that you're covered. The worst thing that can happen is that we think we got this, and then we use one more time, and all bets are off. Right? And when you have so much at stake, because you have two people who are gone now because of your actions, it's really important that when it comes to your mental and spiritual health, that you're there and you have that plan to take care of that as well. And there's a whole lot of good plans that you outlined for us during your remarks and such. But certainly, I really want you to think about that, because that support out here is critical. Any kind of success that you would have. I don't have anything.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Good morning, Mr. Fernandez.
Morning.
So I don't want to retry your case. We're not here to do that, but something really stood out to me that I do want to discuss with you. So, I mean, I think all along you have admitted that you intentionally shot the first victim, the male victim in your case, while you were sitting in the back of the car. When you gave your statements to the police officers, never did you say that the second murder was accidental. The second shooting was accidental. In addition, there was a fourth party in the back seat with you who gave statements to the police that he saw you shoot both of them in the back of the head and then attempt to leave the car. But now you're saying that the second shooting was accidental. So if that's the case, why didn't you say that all along?
Ma'am, getting out of the back of the car, I never intended to shoot Erica. It was an accident. It happened I was attempting to flee the scene. I still had a gun in my hand and it went off. I'm very sorry for what happened with both victims. And it was
Maybe you didn't understand my question. If that's the case and if that's the truth, why didn't you say that to the police after it happened when you were questioned?
I didn't really say anything to the police, ma'am.
And why would the fourth party who was in the car lie about what happened?
I couldn't tell you at the time, ma'am. He told a few things in the story that weren't true, but That's all I can say. It was an accident and it was not intentional.
Okay. But you
No, it
understand,
was-
you know, your version is today is very different from the official version.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the end result is the same, right? There's the loss of 2 lives, very serious. And I did read all of your records from the Department of Correction. You have participated in a lot of programs, but I also did note that the majority of the programs that you participated in were in the past couple of years. So why did it take you so long to get into all of these programs?
Well, at the time, a lot of the people that were running the programs, I had too much time. So they wanted to deal with people that were going home within the next few or several years. And I would take
But
any
you still
program
have a lot of time.
that I
You still
could.
have life in prison. So what changed?
Overcrowding changed. In this facility particularly, we had a lot of level 3s and they moved all the level 3s out. So it's just level 4s. And now we have the opportunity to take a program. And another program I had the opportunity to get involved in was the second chance bail. Because if we still had the overcrowding, I would not have gotten to that second chance bail program.
Yeah, I noted that's very recent too. Your education's very recent as well. Although you did get your GED early on, or your high school. Was it a GED or a high school diploma?
GED.
Okay, yeah, that was early on. But the second chance is very recent too. So were you attempting to get into programs for all of these years?
Yes, even and since I came back from Virginia in 2001, there were numerous programs. I can't name them, but at the time in McDougal, we were faced with the overcrowding, and they took in the program whoever had the least amount of time. A lot of people with time like me, we weren't able to take the programs.
Yeah, no, I understand that. We do hear that often, but again, I don't know why that. If you're saying it was overcrowding, we didn't have overcrowding in 21, 22. So okay, I'm look. Your attorney looks confused. I'm looking at all the dates of the programs. We have all the dates in our system, so we know exactly when he took every program.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for clearing that up for me. I heard all of the questions that my colleague asked, so I won't ask for your release plan and your relapse prevention plan. What are you doing today for work in the facility?
I'm currently a janitor, and I'm also a COVID-19 cleaner.
You still have COVID-19 cleaners? That's a title?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Well, we certainly do appreciate the work that you do with helping the spread of COVID-19. How long have you been a janitor, sir?
I've been a janitor in this facility about 10 years almost.
Yeah, that's a long time. Okay, so where are you now?
Right now I'm at Gardner.
You're at Garner, okay, yeah. Well, you've been there since 2016.
I'm 14.
Oh, you had a brief transfer at some point to Osborne and then went back. Okay.
Yes, it's medical procedure.
Okay, yeah, we don't want to get into any of your private information that's protected. So you have 7 disciplinary reports, which is not a lot for someone who's been incarcerated for almost 30 years, but certainly do notice that they dropped off. Your last one was in 2015. Was there a point in your incarceration where your mindset changed?
Yes, I just matured and I learned the ways of the prison. I just fell in line. I stayed out of trouble. I just do the programs, I stay busy.
That's good. Okay, and as far as vocational educational stuff, did you do anything there? I know you have a plan to get your CDL, but I'm not sure what types of programs they have at Garner for things like that.
Currently, I'm a certified commercial cleaner. I received a certification back in '01 when I went to Virginia. I was transferred there due to overcrowding.
Yeah. Yeah, we see that. You were there for about a year, almost a year. Oh, no. That's right. Yeah. Okay, and you held positions in the chapel and commissary as well, right? How long did you do that?
They were short only because I was supposed to go to the voc ed over there, and when I finally did, I was taking up electronics, and I was more than halfway through with the class, and then I ended up transferred, so I couldn't receive my certification in electronics also because I was transferred. But I just managed to, once I was transferred, I managed to assert myself, and I took up commercial cleaning where I managed to get certified.
Well, you received excellent evaluations from all of your supervisors in the positions that you worked in the facility. And I said earlier, we received a lot of letters of support from staff, family, friends, Mr. Boyd, who we know very well and is doing well in the community. So it is quite clear that you've made great progress during your incarceration. And of course, you were 18 years old. So 30 years later, you certainly are not the same person. What do you think you could benefit from before or if you're returning to the community? What type of programming and services?
Actually, I could benefit from working with Mr. Boyd. Just mentoring the young kids and young youths that are in the streets and just encouraging them to get out of the streets and just to connect with their community, their family, and to show them have them look at all the opportunities out there that they have ahead of them, and they can make something of themselves because they're still young. And I benefit because I feel better knowing that I helped somebody that was in need, whether it be like if I have an apartment and they needed a place to just come and cool off and just talk about things, or if they needed something to eat, I'd feed them. And I benefit because I feel good about myself because I helped someone.
Yeah. Okay. You didn't have any criminal history prior to this, right?
No, ma'am.
Was that because you were doing the right thing or just because you didn't get caught doing the wrong thing?
I was a follower. That's what basically led me to this.
Yeah.
When I graduated 8th grade, I was in a Catholic school out in Black Rock, St. Anne's, and I had a chance to take the test and go to Fairfield Prep or Notre Dame, where I was going to play football. And I took it on myself to let my family know, all because I didn't want to I was tired of wearing the uniform to school every day, that I'd rather go to another school where I didn't have to wear a uniform. That was not a good choice. And I wish I hadn't made that choice.
Yeah. Well, hindsight is always 20/20, they say, right? And as kids, we don't want to listen to our parents or. All of this started because of an incident at a nightclub. Why were you jumped at that club?
I intervened in a fight that was going on. A guy I knew from elementary school, he was all right. He's a good friend, over the years, we lost touch. I transferred to schools. He transferred to different schools, and I finally had a chance. I saw him that night, and I remembered him. And he was getting beat up pretty bad, so I just stepped in to help him out, to get him out of the situation. And in turn, it backfired on me because a lot of people, including myself and my friend, we were thrown out of the club, and the crowd turned on me once the club emptied out.
Have you been in that situation during your incarceration, or someone close to you was being attacked or involved in a fight?
No, ma'am.
No. Okay. So how would you handle that differently? Let's say you're out in the community and family members being attacked or something. What do you do?
If I intervened this time, I would just simply try to do conflict resolution and come to an agreement, talk the other person down. I wouldn't use violence.
Okay. This case went to a jury trial. Did you have a choice in that matter?
My lawyer thought it was in the best interest just to go to trial.
Okay. What was the sentence prior to going to trial? What was the sentence they were suggesting?
They were still offering me life with no parole.
Oh, it was life without parole regardless.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for speaking with me, sir. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Ms. Chance.
Yes, so hello, Mr. Fernandez.
Good morning.
So I just want to ask you to clarify something for me. Today, in your opening comments, you said you acted in a reckless manner. Before, you said it was an accident. So can you clarify what you mean by reckless manner versus an accident? Because, and I ask because in reading the police report and actually statements from the victim, it's a little different than what you're saying. So if you can.
Ma'am, I say not to minimize the crime. I say it was an accident because I didn't mean to shoot Erica. It happened when I was trying to flee the scene.
What about the other victim?
At the time, I made a bad choice. I was threatened, and as I said in a statement, when I was younger in 5th grade, my house was shot up. And
I got all of that, but I'll tell you why I asked that. So why did you decide to go riding around with the male victim while he was delivering pizza?
because earlier in the day, I was smoking weed and PCP. I was also drinking. I had not eaten a meal and I started to feel sick. Originally, I was supposed to go to a movies with some friends, but I was feeling sick, so I wanted to go home. I was walking on my way home, and James' work happened to be on that same route. So I figured I could ask him for a ride to assist me getting home. I was feeling sick.
So what was your thought when he drove 1 block close to the hospital? Did he know that you were sort of not feeling well?
No, he knew before the fact we even started the ride. And that just was a bad decision on my part, and I wish I could change that. Mr. McMillan didn't deserve that, and neither did Miss McGilvery.
Okay, well, thank you for saying that. So my other question is, of all the programs that you've taken, which one do you think helped to address your poor decision-making and has changed you to be the person you say you are today?
I would say a majority of them. A lot of the programs I've taken, they involve decision making, and I feel all of them have reinforced what I've been working on. And I'm almost 50. That being said, and the main program that stuck out for me, though, even though I not too long ago took it up, was Voices, because it taught me about empathy, and I already taken accountability, and it just reinforced it. And understanding what I did was wrong, and it helped me just basically to understand that not only were the victims, but their families became victims, and I also made my family victims also as well.
So you completed the Tier 2 program in 2022, and I looked at your release plan whenever you have the opportunity to go back in the community, but you did not include any kind of substance abuse treatment. But today I hear you saying that substance abuse played a huge role in the crimes that you committed. And you indicated such to the parole officer during your interview. So why do you think you did not include it as part of your release plan when it had played such a critical role in why you're there today?
I've been incarcerated 30 years, so I've had a chance to sit and reflect, but at the same time, I haven't taken a drink and I have not gotten high on PCP and weed. But again, if the board feels that I should take a program, if they grant me a second chance, I will absolutely do so.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I have learned over the years is, first of all, do you think that you were an addict back then?
I think I was a knucklehead young kid, just doing what I saw everyone else do. And I've been drinking beer since I first started high school when I met my new group of friends. I didn't really smoke, so I didn't smoke the weed with the PCP until I was around my beginning of my junior year when I was 17, and we were at a party.
So, Mr. Fernandez, in today's world, PCP is so prevalent along with other types of drugs. And for me, would be an area of concern for me, because I think despite it being 30 years, if you're an addict for life. So even if you can be sober for 30 years, it can just happen just like that. And I can say that based on my formal training and my interaction with others who have had an addiction to drugs. So, do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Well, you know, I don't have any further questions, Madam Chair, and thank you for answering.
Thank you, Ms. Chance. Okay, so at this point, we will ask the Office of Victim Services to facilitate any input they have from the victims' family members. Ms. Vasquez, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, board members. We have 3 victims that are connected via conference call, and they wish to address the board. This will be your opportunity to express to the board your wishes and concerns. At this time, You can unmute your microphone by pressing *6, and you may begin. Pardon, Madam Chair. And then once all they're done, I am going to be reading a statement from another victim. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Ursula McMillan. Should I just start?
Yes.
So my name is Ursula McMillan. I'm the oldest of the McMillan children. And I'm James's sister. I was 17 when he was killed. I want to first thank you, Joe, for being transparent. And I want to thank you for sharing the events of that night. It may be helpful to help my family heal. It's hard to believe it's been almost 30 years since you snuffed out the life of my 18-year-old brother. We had just lost our mom from a stroke at the age of 42 only a year earlier, and James functioned like a parent to us when she died. I'm sure she was present and watched as Joe took the life of her eldest son, and I'm sure she was there to welcome him with open arms when he entered the gates of heaven. It's quite unfortunate as I think upon the ways that James probably would have enhanced and positively impacted the world. We can only imagine because we never got to see what his potential would have been. On that day, April 28th, 1995, Joe callously, carelessly, and recklessly took the lives of two people, James McMillan Jr. and Erica McGilvery, and left a hole in the hearts of many. Not only did Joe take the lives of two innocent people, but he tried to snuff out the life of the child who was the only living survivor and witness. From what I heard, that could have potentially been 3 lives that he took on that night. Life in prison without parole isn't enough for Joe. He planned to kill my brother, and I'm not sure whether he planned to kill Erica, but because she was there, he took her life too. Then he allegedly tracked down the child that was left alive in order to kill him too. Thank God for Jato's bravery and willingness to tell what he had seen, or we might never know who murdered our loved ones. The McMillan children have added value to this world, and we can only imagine what James would have added as well. My brother Keith and I have used our words and our hands in an effort to bring about healing in this world. I have become an accomplished surgeon, and my hands have been used as an instrument to allow God to bring about healing to many. On the other hand, Joe used his hands to take life. My brother Keith has grown up to be a very respectable man. He works hard, he's a great father and husband, and he is a minister for God. We forgive Joe, but justice needs to be served, and he needs to pay for his crimes. 30 years isn't enough for the lives that Joe had affected by killing 2 people and leaving hundreds of survivors to miss them and mourn them. I didn't even realize that I hadn't taken the time to grieve James's death until we received a letter from Victims Advocate. It's as if April 28, 1995 is occurring all over again. When Joe murdered James, he shattered my father's heart in a million pieces, and he never truly recovered. His health suffered, and he never found joy in anything after James Jr.'s murder. Unfortunately, he passed away at age 64. The fortunate part is that he will never have to know about this parole review. I know he couldn't have handled the thought that Joe could possibly be released into society. Keith and I are the only living members from our immediate family and the products of our 2 parents. We will be the voices for our family members who no longer live. We will be James Jr.'s voice. Who knows how our lives would have turned out if that hadn't been a snowball negative effect when Joe murdered my brother. I hope Joe has had a lot of time to think. I hope he has sought out our Father God and asked for forgiveness. And I hope he has become a better person and man. I wish Joe no ill will. My family forgives Joe. We don't have the final say on whether Joe gets paroled. I will trust that my Father God will allow for the appropriate action in this case. I just want Joe to pay for his crimes. So I plead with the parole board to deny any parole at this time for Joe Fernandez. I think he would be unsafe for our community without the proper supports, and it would be a grave miscarriage of justice. It is commendable, however, that Joe has what Joe has done with the hospice program. He has helped people to die with dignity. I am all the more saddened, however, because my brother was unable to die with dignity. As the board has mentioned, Joe has entered several programs only recently. I think there needs to be more evidence of a longer time frame that shows that Joe is truly rehabilitated. Thank you very much for allowing us to give input.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Keith McMillan. I am James McMillan Jr.'s younger brother. As my sister just said, that when this occurred almost 30 years ago, and to be in all honesty, I grieved it when it happened because I went through the court case. You know what I mean? I saw it when it happened. I went through the court case, but I concur with my sister. My father was never the same. My life was never the same. The things that occurred on that night have changed me dramatically throughout the entirety of my life. I will say this, because some people have a sense of they know of God, and there's a difference between knowing of God and knowing who God is. As my sister said, I'm a minister, but I don't use that as a title. I am surrendered to the will of God. So the same thing Ursi said, I have to technically thank Joe, because it's the things that happen to you in your life that God can use to bring you into where he's calling you to. I'm not thanking him for the act of what he did. I'm thanking him for the fact that God will take all things and turn them and use them for your good if you allow him to. I heard earlier when Joe said that he was a child of God. The truth be told, a child of God that has the Holy Spirit in operation within them will bear the fruit of that God that they say they serve. The fruit of that God they say they serve, when you answer those questions there, what is the fruit? Okay, so what is the fruit of the Holy Spirit? Love, peace, joy, kindness, long suffering, forbearance. That's what that means, right? Self-control. Those are fruits of the Spirit. If you catching tickets and you've been in for 30 years, have you mastered self-control? Question to ask yourself. Because the truth be told, when they asked you what you would do when you got outside, the number one answer should have been, whatever my Father in heaven tells me to. Because your life is not yours. You owe, period. Not just for your life, but you owe for the two you took as well. You took two lives. I get it. My sister's real emotional about it because she's going through the grieving process. Me, I'm going to speak about it from a spiritual standpoint. The truth be told, and I hope you did, I hope you found an authentic relationship with God. Truth be told, we'll never know. Of course, you can say whatever you want to say inside of a parole hearing, which, by the way, we shouldn't even be having. Because to be honest with you, I figured you were already dead. That's how I was able to move forward. That's how I was able to live and become a better person, because I thought you were gone already. I'm going to keep it a buck with you. I ain't going to lie to you at all. And I hope you take this to heart. My only question that I have for you, I'm not going to ask about what you're going to do outside, because that's irrelevant to me. What God decides to do with this parole, between the parole board and God, has nothing to do with me. Whether you get released or you don't, doesn't matter to me. Because I've already, like my sister said, I've already forgiven you for it. And I ain't going to hold no grudge against you because I don't have a space in me for it. Right? Me holding the grudge against you, being pissed off about what happened over 30 years ago, I ain't even got the space for that. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I have things to do. I have families to take care of. I have children to raise to make sure they don't end up in prison like you. I have children to make them mindful, beautiful, wonderful, respectful women and men that come out to society and be a productive part of society. That's my job. I got to carry that legacy on because my brother didn't get the opportunity to do it, nor did Erica. Right? That is what is at question right now. So here's my question. The only question I have for you is, what will you do with the life you have if they don't let you out? Not if you do. Will you then, you say you have to do natural life, which technically you should be doing, right? Life without the possibility of growth. If you've never seen outside again, never seen outside again, would you still be doing all these programs? All the programs that you're doing are not to help other people. They're to help yourself so that you can acclimate back into society. You want to be a CDL driver. Your job is irrelevant. You haven't been outside in 30 years. You have no idea what it's like outside. Like the parole board was saying, fentanyl and all that, it's regular. It's out here. Weed, legalized, all that. They're saying that you might possibly have substance abuse. Once you're an addict, you're an addict. That's true. That's a fact. As soon as you step outside, every temptation you can think of is out here. So what happens if you don't have an authentic relationship with God? From what I was listening to from your conversation earlier today, how you changed your statement from it was accidental, first it was purposeful, it was reckless, then it was accidental. Bro, you shot 2 people. And that taking accountability is taking accountability, bro. You killed 2 people, flat out. Whether he was on PCP, whether he was drunk, whatever the situation was, the fight, the argument, it doesn't matter. Bro, you killed 2 people. You owe for them lives and yours. So in all honesty, truth be told, whether they let you out or not, you can sing whatever song you want to try to get out of jail. But outside, without that relationship with God, without an authentic one, accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, not just Savior, Lord. Let him be your boss. And if he tells you whatever he says to do, that's what your life is now going to be consistent of. It's surrendering to the will of God, period. Nothing else to it. Ain't got nothing to do with no CDL. Ain't got nothing to do with no job. Ain't got nothing to do with no outside. Ain't got nothing to do with no mentoring, because you're not going to be successful at none of that until you take direction from the one God. Until you take direction, until you accept Jesus Christ for who he truly is, then you can get true healing. Then your life will be worth something. Because the truth be told, the only person that's paid for your life that you're currently breathing in right now is Christ on the cross. So you still owe for that. And until you accept his will, purpose, and plan for your life, and start bearing the fruit of the God that I serve, and the God that my sister serves, and the God that my brother serves, that's the only true way you can get redempted. Because that's the only one who paid the price for it. So I hope you take this to heart. Parole board, whatever you guys decide to do, I just pray that you decide to do it in a manner that is right. Justice for me ain't being served by y'all anyway. Justice for me is served by Christ. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Good morning, board.
Good morning.
My name is Tanisha McMillan. I am the youngest sibling. I was 7 years old in 1995. I don't remember much, but I do remember how James made me feel included and accepted among my siblings. When he was taken, I quickly had to get accustomed to dysfunctional and broken. To me, James was the glue to the mix of siblings and who made everything appear picture perfect to me being the youngest sibling. Once he left, there was a huge shift among the siblings, and I immediately felt ostracized. As I grew up, I saw the toll his absence took, and we became even more divided. The toll it took on my father, words cannot describe. My father passed away in 2011, 13 years ago, and that was it, nothing to hold the McMillans together. As you can see, I have not mentioned the word family, because my idea of a family is what I was forced to grow up with, and I know that idea would have been different if James wasn't taken away. It's a different hurt that I feel today, because it feels like reliving everything all over again and feeling and thinking about how things could have been different with the McMillans functioning like a family. How it could actually not have a divided family where we share the same last name with. James doesn't get to enjoy life today. He doesn't get to enjoy family and create a family of his own. I'm sorry and sad to say, Mr. Fernandez, you do not get to enjoy that either. I understand we are human beings and people make mistakes, but we have a system in place to uphold justice and enforce accountability by law. I do not feel justice would be rightfully upheld releasing Mr. Fernandez on parole today. And I thank you for allowing us and my other siblings to speak today.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm going to be reading two statements. The first one reads like this. Dear members of the parole board, I am writing to you today with a heavy heart, urging you to deny parole to Joseph Fernandez, the individual responsible for the brutal and senseless murder of James McMillian and his beloved girlfriend, Erica McGilvery, on April of 1995. It has been nearly 30 years since that tragic day, but for our family, the pain and devastation have never faded. James and Erica were young, full of life, and had bright futures ahead of them. They were taken from us in an act of unthinkable violence, a crime so horrific that it has left an irreparable void in the lives of those who loved them. Our family was forever changed, and the trauma we endured continues to haunt us to this day. We live with the pain every single day. This loss was not just ours, it was a loss to their friends, their community, and to the futures they never got to live. Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, all of these are constant reminders of what was stolen from us. There is no parole from this grief, no relief from the sorrow we carry. If Mr. Fernandez is granted parole, it would send a message that the lives of James and Erica's were disposable, that justice is fleeting, and that the suffering of our family does not matter. Beyond our grief, there is also the concern for public safety. The nature of the crime was deliberate, merciless, and deeply disturbing. Someone capable of such violence does not change overnight. The risk remains that another innocent life could be taken if this individual is released. We trusted the justice system to hold Mr. Fernandez accountable, and a life sentence was imposed for a reason. Granting parole would undermine that justice and dishonor the memory of those who were taken too soon. We, the surviving family and friends, will never get a second chance with our loved ones. We are forced to live with this loss for the rest of our lives, and Mr. Fernandez should be required to do the same. I respectfully ask that you consider our unwavering pain, our loss, and our continued suffering when making your decision. Please deny parole and ensure that Joseph Fernandez remains behind bars where he belongs. Thank you for your time and commitment to the justice. Sincerely, Erica Thomas. Dear board members, receiving a letter from the state of Connecticut informing me that a man that was supposed to have life in prison without parole is now up for parole has been jarring. It brought up feelings my family and I had buried in an undesirable way. I am writing on behalf of myself and my family to express our strong opposition to the parole of Joseph Fernandez, inmate number 238390. We believe that granting parole at any time would diminish the severity of the malicious murders for which he was convicted. I was a teenager when I watched my sister leave for a fun evening with her boyfriend, only to be told the next morning that they had been murdered. My mother went to identify her and returned with bloody personal artifacts that will forever be etched in my mind. The room we shared was now hollow and empty. I would sleep for hours to escape from reality. The depression we all suffered was unsurmountable. I was still a teenager when I swore in to testify as a witness to recount what I saw that evening. My parents shielded me from attending the whole trial, but shared that this felon showed no remorse. When asked why he shot my sister, the response was, "I don't know." The trauma and grief have never left us. It continued to eat away at my father specifically until he passed away 3 years later. Not only has my immediate family been affected, but also my grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, friends, and other relationships. When this letter arrived, I contacted our victim advocate and she let me know a new law was passed. A new law was passed, where convictions of felons under the age of 21 are now eligible for parole. That does not feel like justice to us. He physically took 3 lives, James and Erica and himself. He then caused a ripple of collateral damage to countless other lives. Has he shown remorse now? Does that matter? The impact of his crimes is profound and lasting for us all. Concerns regarding Joseph Fernandez, inmate number 238390, potential parole include lack of demonstrated rehabilitation. He may have participated in certain programs within the correctional facility, but we have serious doubts about the sincerity and effectiveness of any supposed rehabilitation. Simply completing programs does not guarantee a change in behavior. Continued risk to public and personal safety. The premeditated nature of the crimes he committed gives us reason to believe that granting him parole would place the community and us at an unacceptable risk of reoffending. Severity of the crime. He ruthlessly shot them from the back seat. There was no self-defense. There was nothing but evil and anger. Granting parole at this stage would again diminish the seriousness of these offenses and fail to provide adequate justice for James, Erica, our families, and friends. Victim impact. We continue to suffer from deep emotional distress due to the loss of Erica. It was a severe disruption to our family and was the catalyst for many more changes to include physical and emotional trauma throughout the years. Our voices should be considered in this decision. Lack of a viable reentry plan. We're not confident that someone capable of committing these crimes will have the ability to successfully reintegrate into society. We have not been presented with any evidence of a stable support system, employment opportunities, or a realistic plan to address the underlying issues that contributed to his criminal behavior. Therefore, we respectfully request that the parole board denies the parole for Joseph Fernandez, inmate number 238390. Continued incarceration is necessary to protect the public, us, and uphold the principles of justice. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Nicole McGilvery. Madam Chair and board members, this is all that I have for this case. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, we will afford each of the attorneys an opportunity to speak and make a statement. We'll begin with State's Attorney Formicella. If you have any comments or statements you'd like to make, you may do so now.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, members of the Board of Pardons and Parole. As I say at many of these meetings, the impact of the victims' families, tremendous in all of these cases, and giving them deference to their thoughts and their opinions is important when considering what to do with a given case, and knowing that nothing that happens today or in the future will take away the pain of those victims and the other victims who did not participate here today. I'd like to begin by stating that Mr. Fernandez has begun an important journey in his rehabilitation. He's completed a number of programs, including Tier 2, Voices, Smart Recovery. He's involved in Alcohol Anonymous. He's involved in the Pell program, improving his education. And these are all admirable achievements by Mr. Fernandez. Also, his work in the hospice unit and working with the COVID-19 cleaning committee is incredibly important, and Mr. Fernandez should be proud of his involvement in those endeavors and learning empathy for his fellow inmates as well as other members of our society. And I hope that Mr. Fernandez continues that behavior throughout the duration of his period of incarceration, whatever the board deems appropriate. I'd also like to say that endeavoring to receive his CDL license is an appropriate plan or part of a plan if he were to be released, as well as mentoring youth who come from a similar background as Mr. Fernandez. All of these traits are admirable, and Mr. Fernandez should be proud of the work that he's begun to do on himself. There are concerns from the Office of the State's Attorney as to early release, however. And I will first begin with the facts of the case, in which 2 individuals were shot in the head and killed on the day of April 28, 1995. The 30-year anniversary is just over a month away. There was a lot of discussion here today about whether or not the conduct that day was accidental or reckless. I would submit to the board that it was intentional. It was more serious, and that is why Mr. Fernandez was punished with the most serious period of incarceration that the state of Connecticut has to offer, which was imprisonment without the possibility of release. I would say there are concerns regarding Mr. Fernandez's recitation of the facts and what the facts were found by the jury. There seemed to be some indication of victim blaming. There seems to be some inconsistency as to whether or not Mr. Fernandez was threatened earlier through the schools and him hearing a rumor that one of the victims, Mr. McMillan, was going to attack him and or shoot up him in his house. However, he gets in the back seat of the car with Mr. McMillan that day because he was not feeling well and needed a ride. I would say some of those statements seemed inconsistent. I would say that a lot of the altercation that day seemed to be placed on Mr. McMillan that day, and that is concerning. I don't believe that Mr. Fernandez doesn't take responsibility for what he did that day. I believe he said that he takes responsibility. He feels remorseful that day. However, the way in which it was presented here today, there does seem some indication that Mr. McMillan had some part in his death when he was shot from the back seat of the car in the head, as well as the other victim, Erica, who had no involvement in any type of aggressive actions against Mr. Fernandez at any point, and was again likewise shot and killed that evening. The state has the same concerns that were expressed during questioning by the board, that while it is excellent that Mr. Fernandez is engaging in programs now and more recently, those are more recent programs. That's not to say that he did not complete programs or complete his GED prior, but these are recent programs and that Mr. Fernandez will likely need to continue to work on himself if he were to receive any type of relief. I would also say that through questioning of Board Member Cole and Board Member Chance regarding substance abuse treatment, that again, it is a lifelong addiction and needs lifelong solutions to prevent any type of relapse. However, it is a little bit concerning that the substance abuse treatment, or rather acknowledgement of the substance abuse problem at the time of the shooting of both of the victims, that Mr. Fernandez cites the use of PCP and then well as drinking, and then it was just mentioned to the parole officer as well as the board most recently that he would have a problem with substance abuse. I'm not certain that this recent acknowledgement is enough for the board to find that Mr. Fernandez has acknowledged any type of substance abuse treatment, that his need for substance abuse treatment, and that further work in this area would be necessary. And so I would ask the board to consider the seriousness of the offense. In this case, I would ask the board consider the only recent completion of the programming, as well as only recent acknowledgement of substance abuse issues, as well as Mr. Fernandez's statements relating to the incident of the crime. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Palmicelli. At this time, Attorney Guerrero, if you have any remarks you would like to make, you may do so now.
Attorney Capetta is going to be the one making remarks today. Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the board for their time and consideration of Joe's parole eligibility. Before I start with my prepared statement, I do just want to respond to the state's attorneys as far as there being some victim blaming. In the almost year that I have gotten to know Joe, he has never blamed the victims. And in his statement, I think what he was trying to do was just explain, the full story of what occurred and what led up to April 28th, 1995. And I think he just wanted to be transparent, not only for the board, but for the victims' families as well.
You are trash.
Now, the board did receive our social narrative, and in that social narrative that you had the opportunity to read Joe's what-if statements. Joe's what-if statements had me thinking about my own what-if scenario and alternate endings for Joe. So the date's April 28th, 1995. After school, Joseph goes to his friend Derek's house, along with a group of friends. Some friends are smoking PCP-laced weed. When it's passed to Joe, instead of taking a turn, he decides to pass. Later on that evening, he's tired, he decides to leave Derek's house. As he's walking home, he approaches Crossroads Pizza and spots James' car parked in front of the restaurant. He asks James for a ride home. James agrees and says he can take him as far as his next delivery stop. Joe confronts James about the rumors he's hearing. James says they have no beef. Clear-minded and sober, Joe decides to take his word for it and squash the beef. He realizes whatever disagreement they have is not worth it. James picks up Erica. James then arrives at his delivery location. Joe exits the vehicle and walks home the remainder of the way. He goes to bed and wakes up the next morning, eats breakfast while his grandmother reads the news, or rather lack of news. This version of Joe, mature, wise, one who had the ability to think things through, one who had impulse control, one who had a fully developed brain, didn't exist 30 years ago. The Joe that existed 30 years ago was only 18 years old. He lacked the tools to rationalize like the one in my alternate scenario. However, I can sit here before the board and confidently state that the Joe you heard from, the Joe that I have gotten to know over the past 11 months, is a man who is mature, intelligent, wise, and evolved. His DOC record is a testament to his growth from a youth to a man. Joe has spent the past 30 years not only paying for the crimes he's committed, but also working on himself. He not only earned his GED and is currently working towards his college degree, but he's taken advantage of numerous programs offered by DOC, even before Public Act 23-169 came to be. He would have taken more but for his level 4 status. He went beyond learning to mentoring and facilitating groups. On top of that, he's taken on various employment opportunities. He's even volunteered as a hospice worker, which is reflective of the person Joe has become. From mentoring younger inmates to sitting by those who are in their final stages of life, Joe is there to lend a helping hand and be there for those during their time of need. Joe has gone from a follower to a leader to a mentor. It comes as no surprise that if released, he will continue to impact others and guide the younger generation to make better choices than he did. He knows better than most how one decision can derail the rest of your life. Myself and Attorney Guerrero are juvenile public defenders, and we understand more than most how the youth we work with can benefit from the mentorship and advice Joe can offer. His story and evolution can make a difference in many lives. Without a doubt, he has more value in the community than he is behind bars. When I think of Joe, I see an individual who is remorseful, rehabilitated, and redeemable. From the very first time I met Joe, he was honest about his role that fateful day in 1995. While shedding tears, he stated this never should have happened. He continued to express his remorse every other time I visited him, every other time Attorney Guerrero visited him, and every other time Social Worker Mako visited him. Regardless of the language that he's used, he has held himself accountable, and he is very sorry for what he did 30 years ago. In addition to his remorse, I also see someone who is reformed. Joe took advantage of the opportunities available during incarceration. While many others in his shoes would have given up with his life sentence, he chose to keep going by furthering his education, gaining new skills, mentoring others, all tools that he has added to his toolbox. If granted parole, Joe has all these tools that he can utilize when facing the life issues that will inevitably arise. Joe does not need to be another life lost. When we think about the reasons and purposes of sentencing and punishment, two theories come to mind: incapacitation and rehabilitation. Joe's been incarcerated since he was 18 and 77 days old. In 1 month's time, he will have completed 30 years of incarceration. This is a significant period of time. He has spent 62% of his life behind bars. The primary purpose of incapacitation is to remove one from society. And although Joe has been away from so long, he has not lost sight of the concept of rehabilitation. Joe is the quintessential example of rehabilitation. As I stated earlier, his DOC record is evidence of reform. His educational achievements, his completion of programs, including Tier 2 to address substance abuse issues. He also attends AA, something which he's committed to do if released. And I know that, the board and even the state attorney might have suggested that he minimized his substance abuse issues. Joe has always talked about that in the past, 11 months that we've gotten to know him. He understands the importance of maintaining his sobriety. He will continue with AA and NA. He also has a great family support who can help him if he is ever feeling a moment of weakness. The board also received an offender work performance written by Lieutenant Perez, which perfectly sums up the person that Joe has become while incarcerated. And if I could just quote a couple of sentences, Lieutenant Perez says Joe has always displayed a positive attitude, demeanor with staff and supervisors alike. He can be counted to complete various tasks outside of his current job assignments. His dedication to consistent hard work was of great value to the facility during the COVID pandemic. Inmate Fernandez has proven to have changed his attitude and outlook at life. He's looked upon as a mentor among his fellow peers. He's an asset to this facility by his work ethic and the guidance he is willing to take on with new commits. He has taken advantage of his incarceration. It's also important to know that Joe has only received 7 disciplinary tickets, a majority taking place when he was under 22 years of age, and the last being 10 years ago. More importantly, none of these tickets were violent in nature. And finally, it's worth mentioning that Joe's life without parole sentence was mandated by statute at the time. The judge did not have discretion in how he sentenced Joe. The judge could not consider factors that a judge today could and must consider. Based on his impeccable record, myself, Attorney Guerrero, and Social Worker Mako do not believe Joe will reoffend. We truly believe he will become a productive member of society and that add value to others' lives. I urge the board to consider the reasons stated above, in addition to Joe's reentry plan and his letters of support. And I respectfully ask the board to give Joe the opportunity of parole. Thank you.
You are trash.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to thank, of course, the victims' family members for their brave presentation here today, and the attorneys and social worker for their input today. At this point, Mr. Fernandez, the panel will discuss your case in deliberation, and we will come back to you shortly with our decision. Mr. Pohl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank the input from the victims in this case. Mr. McMillan's older sister, a lot of grace there, you know? And, you know, when she spoke, she understands her role and she has forgiveness. However, she wants to ensure that Mr. Fernandez is doing the right thing, you know? And so as I look at this, certainly this is a case of capital murder, and the sentence was not something that the judge had a decision in. It's something that he had to impose. The tools in this case, assessments rate out Mr. Fernandez is low when it comes to concern about reoffending. He has no criminal history. He has come in and he has earned his high school diploma. In the facility, he has recently engaged in the Second Chance Pell program, and part of his release plan is to continue on for a bachelor's degree. When it comes to programming early on, and I understand it. I mean, we've dealt with this several times. It's you know, when you have people incarcerated, the people who are up front and are closest to being released are the ones who are given priority when it comes to programming. However, that's not the case with the alternatives to violence program, you know, where it's a voluntary program. And Mr. Fernandez engaged in that program. Not only the basic, but then took the advanced program, and he became a mentor. And by his estimate, some 40 inmates had taken that program when he went through, when he was doing his co-facilitation. And it's important to understand that because we're doing that, you know, there's no way to measure. But if you're taking anti-violence programs that are giving people alternatives when it comes to violence, you know, how many people aren't going to get hurt because they go through that program? You know, so his actions were in the right place as early as they could possibly be. He engaged in hospice training and hospice care, and served 5 people to help them with their final journey. And certainly that program is something, as I said during my remarks, is you can't do hospice without it changing just your reflection on life and the meaning of it. It's taken a great deal of programming that deal with thinking. Although, you know, Attorney Formicella brought forward that the programming is recent, but much of that program is recent. You know, and again, it has to do with the ability to take the programming, or when you can get into it. His disciplinary reports, none of which are violent in nature, and the last one having to deal with bartering or trading for something which is not allowed in DOC. that's an important thing to look at. His work record, his recent and all along the way evaluations on that show excellent. He's connected with wants to connect with the merge, next level of empowerment for housing, Norman Gaines program script, and as you pointed out, many in court letters, and Attorney Capetta pointed out the letter from Lieutenant Perez. There's also a letter in there from C.O. Sherman. And these are the people that have the greatest understanding of how Mr. Fernandez conducts himself on a daily basis. He has a good plan. When it comes to substance use, I heard what Attorney Capetta said, but I also heard what Attorney Formica said. I am not concerned that Mr. Fernandez is going to use again. I'm concerned that the connections, and when I asked a couple of times about people, places, and things, right? Because that's the lingo in the recovery world. What exactly is going to be there, right? Because that connection with other people, and oftentimes recovery coach, things like that in the community are there so that as you make a transition, Mr. Fernandez, the last time that he was in the community, took 2 lives. And so as we place or contemplate placing Mr. Fernandez back into the community, he's going back to a community that the last time he was there, that's what he did. And the tools that are necessary to be there so that he can have the best possible chance, are very important. I believe that in Mr. Fernandez's future, he would absolutely be suitable for parole. I'm just in a place where I would like to see a little bit more work when it comes to setting up a recovery plan that actually speaks to what we're going to do when we're in the community. And then the programming that he has happening, he's got positive stuff going on. He's 33 credits into a associate's degree in business. I think it's some time. As where we are right now, it's 29 years on a capital murder case. And the Assistant State's Attorney Formica's summation there, he's begun his journey. He's begun a very important journey. And I think the day will come when he comes out and has impact. And the last thing I want to say is, understand also that with what the victims had to say, right? There are people with Mr. Fernandez's background in the community that are positively impacting our cities because they're working in programs like Mr. Fernandez has pointed to. Because kids in the community, kids that were Mr. Fernandez 30 years ago, who are they going to listen to? People who know where they are and what they're talking about. So for me, I appreciate all of the work that Mr. Fernandez continues to do. And although today I don't think it's time, I think that in the not too distant future, it would be time for Mr. Fernandez to go out and make a positive impact.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. So I think you covered it all, basically. You know, we have to remember here that this was a life sentence without the possibility of parole. And our legislature has recognized that offenders in their youth, who commit their crimes in their youth, are less culpable compared to adults who commit these types of crimes. So he now has the opportunity to parole when there wasn't this option. There was no out for him prior to this public act passing. I agree with you. I think he is on a journey. He has grown. He has matured. I certainly do not believe that he's the same person that he was at 18 years old. And I'm certainly not willing to deny parole forever. Right? I do think that there is more time needed to continue with his rehabilitative efforts and education and work, and I certainly would be willing to rehear this case. As hard as that is for the victims to have to come and do this again, I think at this point, I agree. There's more work to be done, but Mr. Fernandez certainly should not be denied for the rest of his life. So we'll talk about when to bring him back, but we'll hear from Ms. Chance first.
Well, I agree with what both of you have shared, and my area of concern, Mr. Poe touched on it and elaborated on it, and it has to do with his journey on the road to being back in the community, but just wanting to ensure that that particular piece of support that's missing is in place. So that's all I have. And just to express that, I think, you know, even when we do a rehear, the family of the male victim, I think, would support what we do based on, you know, what they have indicated, especially the older sister who is a surgeon. And so I feel giving him some more time to complete his recovery plan is appropriate.
Okay, what are your thoughts on a rehear date?
I mean, his programming, you know, it appears to be 2022, 2023. So it's, if we went with a rehear in 2028, it's 5 years after the completion of his programming. That was something that attorney for my child was pointing at. You know, that he's begun the important journey, but the recentness. So I'm
3 years, yeah. What are your thoughts, Ms. Chance?
I would be okay with that. 3 years.
Reasons, of course, the injury and impact to the victims and the victim's family. say nature and circumstance. I mean, the others don't really apply here. What are your thoughts?
It's not that the only other one that I considered was the inadequate release plan, because that's the area that he needs to work on, but I don't know.
I mean,
He has a good one,
Yeah,
but there's an area there that.
yeah. All right. Okay, 3 years, we're in March 2028. Okay, in the matter of Joseph Fernandez, MA number 238390, I'll make a motion to deny parole at this time, but we'll rehear the case in March of 2028. Reasons for denial are the nature and circumstance of the offense and injury and impact to the victims and the victims' families, and the panel would recommend that you continue with programming and education and avoid any further disciplinary reports. Is there a second to the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Mr. Fernandez, do you understand what we did here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we'll see you in 3 years, and we'll ask you to continue with your efforts. Okay, we wish you the best. Thank you, everyone, for your participation here today.
This concludes the Public Act 23-169. Joseph Fernandez, the number 238390. It's 10:55.
We'll take a 5-minute recess. We'll come back at 11 for the next case.
God, we got a denial. The way Mike Pohl was going into that, I'm like, oh no, he is going to grant, but they didn't. And I don't know if this just rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe it's just me. I don't know, but I found this parole hearing to be disgusting. I don't get it. You show up all these years later, 30 years later, and you literally say, I was getting out of the car and the gun went off by itself. Oh, I was in fear for my life. So I shot you. You shot 2 people in the back of the head. Did you see one tissue there? Did you see any remorse? Did you see any actual connection of empathy? But then the insult to injury and all of the thousands of hearings that we have seen, have we ever seen attorneys passing notes during victim impact statements? Are you kidding me? These are victim impact statements. Have some respect. I don't think we have ever seen this. He starts off by writing a note. I mean, just sit there. There's what they come with, like 3 attorneys, like stacks of files and folders, and they're writing. What are you doing? What are you doing? It's like they've never been or seen a parole hearing in their life. I will like, what are you? You're taking notes so when he gets a rehearing in 3 years, you can bring it there. I'm like, well, I just don't understand. So disrespectful, disgusting. And the way that his attorney opens up with her speech, and she says he's not belittling anything of what happened. He's not victim blaming. He was just explaining to the board and the family what happened. What? He's not victim blaming. He was just explaining what happened. So he's victim blaming. You murdered 2 people for no reason. He was a pizza delivery driver. He was delivering pizzas. Like they said, he took him to the hospital as a buddy just the day before. He got back in his car because they were friends. We still don't know what happened. And then what they keep saying, they're like, the judge had no choice how to sentence him. This was back in the day. You murdered 2 people. What do you mean he had no choice? What, he was going to give him? He was going to, the judge, like, this is also what they're saying. He's already served 30 years. It's like, that's 15 years per life. That's enough? 15 years for a life? You think the judge would have given him anything less than 25 for each life if the judge wanted to be lenient? What are they saying? As a matter of fact, Lady Holly has in the notes, He was sentenced to 999 years. 999 years and 99 months and 999 days. To me, now I could be wrong. I don't know if that was a default either. But to me, that sounds like the judge was actually making a very strong point. He wasn't saying you're getting a life sentence. He wasn't saying you're getting a 1,000-year sentence. He said you're getting 999. Like it was an insult to it. Not an insult. It was you know what, you get what I'm saying. So I don't know if I could find somewhere that, if that's just a technicality that everyone who got life, it will say 99999, or if the judge was sending a message. But we've only seen a few cases with the 99999. So I think the judge was sending a message, but I don't know. I wish I could tell you. Maybe someone could leave it in the comment section. And then his attorney also, I love. She says there are two reasons for being locked up: rehabilitation and incapacitation. To protect others from you. And I'm like, no, there are three reasons. Mr. O'Shea tells us in Louisiana all the time, right? It's to protect the society. It is for rehabilitation, and it's for retribution. I love how she just totally forgot the retribution part. Like, you killed two people. Yeah, you got to be locked up for more than 15 years per life. And now what's crazy is that he gets to come back in 3 years to have another hearing, which I imagine he'll get granted. Why 3 years? What, 28 years is now enough? This was, I don't get it. I don't get what they saw. I thought this was a horrible hearing. He did not show empathy. He did not show remorse. He did not, most importantly, is take account of what happened. He was being disingenuous. He was lying. We do have court records. We have an appeal. It was interesting. You had two appeals. One appeal, which was about his confession and whether or not they could use recording confession. This was an interesting appeal, but more of like, I think, like a law, like a law tube thing. And then he has his appeal here. Look, this is his written statement that he gave to the police. The defendant indicated that he shot McMillan because McMillan threatened me. When asked what that meant, the defendant responded, something that happened a while back at a club. A while back at a club. Remember, he had then gotten a ride from the same defendant. This is now the second time. I got jumped by some guys. He left me. That McMillan, when he got to school that Monday, he lied about that he did something to help me fight, but he didn't. I told him that was missed. When asked why he killed him, the defendant replied, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Jefferson testified that he was able to escape unharmed because the defendant knew him and his family. So this is, I want to point this out. I think, like, I finally have clarity on what happened. He was his buddy. So he got jumped in a club. His buddy left him and told his other buddies that instead of leaving him to be jumped, that he threw back. He threw down. He had his back. And because of that, because he said he had his back when he didn't, he killed him. And he killed his girlfriend. And this is something, and I just don't feel like it was brought up. Like the DA, started slow, and I was like, what is happening with this DA? I thought that the DA was his attorney for a second, the way he was talking so nicely about him. But then I thought he finished nicely. He finished strong. But I still don't feel like it was brought up, the fact of this case that this man shot two people in the back of the head for absolutely no reason. Because his buddy was telling his other buddies that he had his back at a nightclub. when he didn't. And that's why he killed him. This is not normal. This is like psychopathic behavior. This is not like a drug feud that we've seen where you can make arguments. They're fighting over turf. They're in the game. This is just cold-blooded insanity. And then the best that he can do is show up at his parole hearing all these years, 30 years almost to the date later. And what does he say? He threatened me? And then the gun went off by mistake. They always have these guns that go off by mistake, these poor criminals, and shot her in the back of the head. And it's just disgusting. That's no. And I wish they would have. I wish that they would have driven that into him more. He needed to hear like a good Miss Bonnie Jackson smackdown. Oh man, sorry. I got I don't know what else really there is to go over in the appeal. I think that's let me see. I don't know if there's anything else, but we've been here so long anyways. I think it's time to go. But you just listen to the poor victims. You listen to them, and then to imagine again. I can't get over the fact that while they're talking, they're writing, passing notes to each other. What are you kidding me? That's just, I've never seen anything like it. And with that, I'll leave you with final words from the victim. Thank you, Lady Holly. And with that, I'll let you go.
Severity of the crime. He ruthlessly shot them from the back seat. There was no self-defense. There was nothing but evil and anger. Granting parole at this stage would again diminish the seriousness of these offenses and fail to provide adequate justice for James, Erica, our families, and friends.